Hello, thank you for attending ITSM Academy's monthly webcation. My name is Nicole Chaucy. I will be your host today for today's webinar. We have quite a few registrations. I'm going to give a few minutes for those folks to kind of get in and get settled. I also wanted to mention, make sure to follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn for the latest ITSM Academy updates and specials, and subscribe to our YouTube video for more free webinars and inspiration. So with that being said, we're just a few minutes, 1 minute after 11. So I'm going to go ahead and start. Like I said, my name is Nicole Chaucy. I'm so happy that you all are here to join us for today's webinar. We have Ken Wendle, who is author, speaker, consultant, instructor. Ken has been a significant figure in the field of service and support since before the Jurassic period. Is that right, Ken? And you
That's
said,
right.
Okay, and really, he's saying 1990s, so I don't think that's Jurassic period at all. Okay. So, Ken is co-founder of ITSMF USA. He helped launch their national conference in 2001. Holding the record of being a featured speaker for 17 consecutive years. He helped launch highly successful HDI Service Management World in 2018. And can you mention that you will be presenting in November, right?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Great conference. I highly recommend it.
Great. Great. Well, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and let you take the presentation over.
Okay. Thank you very much, Nicole. And again, thank you for being here. So here's the introduction to the value formula. This presentation is based upon a book that I just got done writing, and is in the process right now of being printed, should be published very, very soon. So at the end of the presentation this morning, I'll give you the opportunity to go to a landing page where you can sign up for updates about it and get a free downloadable copy of it when it becomes available. So that's part of my thanks to you for being here this morning. And I always like to start with a thank you. There are a lot of things you could be doing this morning, and the fact that you chose to take some time out of your day to sit in on this webinar this morning is greatly appreciated. So thank you for being here. And I believe very strongly that you're going to find some value in what we're going to share this morning. So let's go ahead and jump right into that. A lot of things to get through. Yes, ma'am.
Ken, I'm sorry, real quick. I did forget. We did mention that we are going to run, I forgot to mention that we are going to run some polling questions throughout the webinar, like we normally do. And Ken would be happy to take any questions that you might have. You can use the question feature in the GoToWebinar. Just type those in, and as they come in, I will just kind of say, hey, we've got a question, can you answer it? So feel free to do that, and then we will also have a Q&A at the end. But if you see something that you're like, you have a slide up and there's something that you'd like to ask a question, feel free to do that. So, okay.
Thank you.
There you go, Ken. You're welcome.
All right. So let me go ahead and talk about what we're going to talk about. So these are the topics this morning. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about value and what it is and how it kind of fits into things. Then we're going to go through the 5 elements of the value formula, which is vision, defining the value, alignment, focusing your value, leverage, augmenting your value. Uniqueness is differentiating your value. So we'll wrap things up by talking about pulling it together and keeping it together. So in my book, and also here, I want to start with a quote from St. Mother Teresa of Calcutta. I love this quote. It says, "We the unwilling, led by the unknowing, are doing the impossible for the ungrateful. We've done so much for so long with so little, we are now qualified to do anything with nothing." And sometimes we feel that way. And if there's anyone that learned the secret of doing a lot with nothing, it's probably St. Mother Teresa of Calcutta. And her life is very inspiring, and there's a lot of interesting stories about how she was able to just accomplish a whole lot, including the Nobel Peace Prize and things like that, in a very with not a whole lot of resources available to her initially. So let's talk about value. One of the things that I like to stress around this idea of value is it's not about you. It's about others. So we need to move from this mindset of what's in it for me, what's in it for me, what's in it for me, to taking more of a focus on, well, what's in it for others? Because value is ultimately about what we deliver to other people. It's the rent that we pay for the privilege of being on this planet. It's much easier to take than it is to give, and value is about giving. So from that, we need to understand, well, what are people looking for? What's their purpose? What are they trying to accomplish? What do they want? So their purpose, their preference, and lastly, their perception, which is something that we can really influence when it comes to value. So let's kind of go into this. So recently, ITIL 4 came out, and this is not, the book is not an IT service management book. It's not an ITIL related book, but I do refer to best practice as I wrote the book. But recently, ITIL 4 came out, and this is the definition of value in the book. The ITIL 4 glossary definition is the perceived benefits, usefulness, and importance of something. My practical definition of value is it's worth it to me. And basically what that boils down to is that, here's my life without it, and here's my life with it. And if the time, the money, the hassle involved in living with this, whatever this might be, is less than the value that I'm getting from it, having it in my life, then it's worth it. But we've all had an experience where we've gone out and we've gotten something, and we found that living with it, the time, the money, the hassle involved is greater than what we're getting from it in terms of the value of it, and then it's basically not worth it. I recently bought something, and I thought this is going to be great, and I tried to install it, I tried to use it, and it became such a hassle, and so much time was being committed. I finally threw my hands up and said, I got to take this back and get a refund on it if I can. So value basically is it worth it to me? If it is worth it to me, it has value. If it's not worth it to me, then it really doesn't have value. So value is interesting in the fact that it's both tangible and intangible. On the screen right now, you see two watches. Both of these watches tell time. One watch, however, is $650,000. Of course, you get free shipping and no tax. The other is $29.49 with tax and shipping added on to that. Both of these things tell time, but why do people buy a Rolex over a Timex? And it's because there's an intangible value. There's the feeling that people get of success, the relationship with the reputation of Timex and so on as a quality timepiece. If the watch stops working, a Timex you might just kind of throw it in the trash or give it away, whereas a Rolex, you hang on to it, you get it fixed, and you pass it down to your heirs. It has something that's more beyond the intrinsic value. So value is both tangible and intangible. One of the things that I stress about value is it isn't determined by what you have. We all have things, but that isn't what determines our value. And your value doesn't necessarily be determined by what you do. We all have skill sets, talents, and so on. Ultimately, your value is determined by what you do with what you have. And so if you look at, for example, the resources that you have available to you, let's say you have building materials and so on and so forth, by themselves, they have some value, but not as much value as when you add your capabilities and skill sets to those. And the skill sets and the capabilities are not valuable unless you have something to do it with. And ultimately, your resources plus your capabilities, what you have and what you can do, is how we deliver a product or a service to people who can get value from that. It delivers something of value. So again, it's not what you have and not what you do, it's what you do with what you have. So value can be expanded, and this is the whole focus of the book and the concept of the value formula, is that you have available things that you can do and things that you have. You use that to create a product or service that you deliver to your customer in what it does for them and how well it does it for them. And then your customers get value because it helps them do something that they may not have been able to do before, or do it better, faster, or cheaper, or enhances what they have. And you want to be able to expand your value by doing more and having more to do things with. So what you can do can be expanded, what you have can be expanded in order to expand the value of the product or service you're delivering to your customers, to allow them to do more, or to help them have more to do things with. So you do that by three things. First of all, understanding and increasing our own capabilities. We can do more. We can learn new skill sets. We can expand our capabilities. And also, we can use the resources we have, our internal resources, more efficiently and more effectively, reduce waste, or maybe use things that we thought were not as valuable and find that there may be more value in those things than we thought they did. And I give examples of that in the first chapter of my book. And then we also, and this is where there's a tremendous opportunity, is leveraging the resources and capabilities of external organizations or people or other things that are out there. So to do more with less, which is the subtitle of this presentation, basically boils down to a very simple concept. We need to do more of the right things with less of the wrong things. And what I worked to try to uncover and to kind of expose within the contents of the book is, what are those right things that we can and should be doing, and how do we discover those things that we should not be doing? So the right things are wrapped up in what I term the value formula model. It starts with our vision. Where are we going? What do we want to be? How, and shaping that and defining that in such a way that we are inspired by that and it causes us to start moving in that direction. We support vision through what's called alignment, where we look at all the aspects of our organization and put all of those activities, our resources, our capabilities directly supporting the accomplishment, the moving toward our vision. The alignment is underpinned and supported by leverage and by uniqueness. And all of this is then supported by and held together through execution. So this is what I term the value formula model. So let's start with vision. Great quote by George Washington Carver: "Where there is no vision, there is no hope." And the word vision is used a lot and is thrown out a lot. But one of the questions, I guess, as a polling question is, first of all, to kind of go back to value for a second, there's a polling question that basically asks, how much emphasis does your organization place on value and value creation? So Nicole, if you want to throw that up there,
I'll
we'll
go
take a
ahead
look at that. Yeah.
and launch that for you.
Mm-hmm.
Give everybody a few minutes to vote
Sure.
on what they decided on. Okay, we're almost halfway through.
Okay. Just as a quick question, when do they see the results as they're rolling in here?
Yeah,
Okay, good.
I'll close it out here.
Okay.
About 70%. So yeah, I'll close it out in a few minutes and then kind of take a look and see. Then you can see the results. So.
Okay, perfect.
Ken, I forgot to mention that you just celebrated your 40th wedding anniversary and went to Europe.
Yeah, that was a marvelous trip. My wife and I had a great time. It was quite a celebration.
That's good, and you just got back to do the webinars. We appreciate that.
Still a little fuzzy. So,
right.
So it looks like
yeah, we're at 75%. So I'm going to close it down, and let's see. Okay.
So it looks like most organizations have at least some degree of focus, in many cases a fairly high degree of focus on value and value creation. About 10%, it's the primary focus. Fortunately, less than around 3%, it's not a focus at all. And I guess, what I take from this is that, to me, at the end of the day, it really is about our value to our customers, our value to, the stakeholders that are in our lives. And so, looking at and focusing on value is probably one of the most, if not the most important thing that we can do as an organization. If we fail to have value, again, if we're not worth it to other individuals or organizations that use our products or services, then we kind of have to ask, well, why are we here? So it really is about, again, value, that we are worth it to them, that they're willing to seek us out, they're willing to use our products and services because we are worth it. So again, one of the most important things that we can do to kind of get back to this idea of the elements of the value formula is vision. The vision is an important aspect of this, and again, it's talked about a lot. The vision statement, and I always stress that it should not just be quote unquote a vision statement, but a vision statement around value, an aspirational sentence or two which captures the essence of what you're all about as an individual or an organization. And and I stress this idea that it's important to have a vision statement. If there's challenges around creating it, it's not something you can just pull out of the air. It's not something that somebody can do for you, but it's a very important aspect, and it's a starting point to help us begin to realize our full value potential. The reason it's so important is that it provides you with your purpose. Why are we doing what we're doing? The vision also drives us to establish meaningful goals. Once we know this is what we want to do, this is what we want to be, then we can establish goals, interim goals, to help us move toward and realize our vision. It also leads us to ways to accomplish our goals. By having that established, we begin to uncover ways to actually move in that direction. In other words, start becoming a meaningful specific instead of a wandering generality. And also it helps us stand out from our competitors. What we are becoming gives us a degree of uniqueness, and it also compels us to achieve our goals. It's something that makes us want to accomplish things in support of that. So just a quick, again, this is not a polling question, but something you can put in the chat window is, as you know, this is a vision statement of an organization to become the world's most loved, the most profitable, and the most loved, the most flown, and most profitable airline. Who do you think this is? What organization do you think would have this as their vision statement? So in your chat window, just feel free to answer that question. I'm not sure if I can see the chat. You can type your messages in there. Who do you think this is?
See, I got a couple people here.
Okay, all right.
Doing in the questions. Sorry, that's okay. Southwest Airlines, Delta.
Okay.
Southwest Airlines. More.
Okay.
I've got 3 Southwest Airlines. So.
Okay. Well, the people who voted for Southwest Airlines, they're absolutely correct. That's Southwest Airlines. And what was funny is I was on a flight recently, and I asked one of the flight attendants, "What's the vision statement for Southwest Airlines?" And he kind of looked at me and he says, "You're testing me. You're testing me." And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "To become the world's most loved, most flown, and most profitable airline." I go, "Great." See, so they communicate that, and if you look at that as a vision statement, it shapes the attitudes, the mindset of the people who work there, that we want to, so if you want to be the world's most loved airline, you're not going to be surly, you're not going to be mean to your customers. And so it helps shape the mindset of the people who work there. Here's another one, just as an example: to create a better everyday life for many people. Now that looks like it could almost belong to anybody. There's a specific organization that created this as their vision statement that they share within their organization. Any thoughts on who this might be?
I've got a couple coming in. Apple.
Okay.
Hope just says everything we do should relate back to this mission statement. GE.
GE. Okay. So far, nobody's hit the nail on the head with this one. Let me go ahead and bring up the answer. IKEA. And having recently been in Europe, IKEA is all over the place over there. We drove past multiple IKEA stores. There's one here locally. I'm sure most people probably have one some within distance, but that's their vision statement. And again, you can see how the people who are working there, if that's what they're all about, is to create a better everyday life for many people, that again kind of helps shape the organization. Here's the last one. This one should be fairly simple: a world without Alzheimer's disease. Any thoughts around this one?
I think they're stumped.
Okay. It should be fairly easy. It is the Alzheimer's Association. And if anybody has ever had someone who suffered from Alzheimer's, or family members, you can appreciate the inspiration of that vision statement: a world without Alzheimer's disease. So you can see here that vision statements, crafting a vision statement, It should be future-based. You'll notice that one of the common threads in those is a concept of to be, to become, to create, and to provide inspiration and provide direction internally. A vision statement is something that is used internally. And it really answers the question, where is our organization going? What are we about? And it should be inspirational as well as aspirational. So that's, again, the vision statement. A lot more examples of that, more guidance around the creation of a vision statement can be provided, which I, again, tried to incorporate, did a lot of research on the best ways to go about that, incorporated within that chapter. So the second aspect or element of the value formula is alignment. That once we know where we're going, it's important for us to put all of our best efforts behind moving in that direction. Jim Collins and Jerry Porras, who wrote Built to Last, gave a statement that building a visionary company requires 1% vision and 99% alignment. So putting all of our wood behind one arrow is the concept behind alignment. So that we're not scattering our efforts, that we are focused, laser focused on moving toward our vision. The reason it's important is that if we're not in alignment, if you think about a car that's not in alignment, or if you look at this example here of a lock, that if you put the key in it, if the pins within the lock are not aligned, that door is not going to be unlocked, or that lock is not going to be unlocked. Putting things in alignment allows us to open up the value. So this idea of alignment basically breaks down into alignment to our vision. We want to make sure, again, that our best efforts are going toward moving in the direction of our vision. Alignment to our customers, understanding what our customers want, what they consider valuable, and then also not to forget that we have our core values as an organization and aligning to those things. And those aspects of alignment are accomplished by alignment of activity. What is it that we're doing, our behavior? So to kind of illustrate this, if you've ever seen the movie Finding Nemo, there's a pivotal scene where Dory gets caught in this fishing net with a bunch of other fish, and Nemo tells his dad, Marlin, in the lower right-hand corner of that first picture, to tell the other fish to swim down. And that momentum, that force of all these fish moving in the same direction eventually causes the boom on the fishing boat to bend and snap and leads to freedom for the fish that were caught in that fishing net. And I know this may sound kind of interesting or kind of strange, but this idea of focus, aligning the resources and capabilities of your organization towards your vision, is a very, very powerful thing and can unleash a lot of, again, value. So there's a concept that I discuss within the book that you've probably seen elsewhere called the Kano model. And the idea here is to understand what's important to your customer. And so aligning to the customer, there are three basic aspects of whatever product or service you're delivering. In the lower right-hand corner, you have the must-haves. This is the price of admission. It can't increase satisfaction, but it can decrease it. If something is missing that should be there, it can create dissatisfaction. In the middle, the one-dimensional, the straight line that goes from the lower left to the upper right, are what are known as one-dimensional aspects of your product or service. The better you do it, the more satisfied people become. So satisfaction depends on how well you do it. An example of that is mileage of a car. The higher the mileage a car gets, the happier typically customers are with that particular car. The lower the mileage, the less satisfied they would be. And then the area that we really have the biggest opportunity is that area known as attractive elements. These are things that people don't necessarily know that they wanted or didn't know that they wanted until they saw it. And it was kind of like, if you go back a number of years, it's like intermittent windshield wipers. At one time, windshield wipers just operated at one speed or two speeds, but then they introduced the intermittent windshield wiper that allowed the mist to kind of get cleared off. My wife and I both have cars now that have sensors that if it starts to rain, the windshield wiper automatically comes on. Now, I didn't know I wanted that, but now I can't, when I get a rental car and it doesn't have that and it starts to rain, it's like, oh darn, I have to turn the windshield wiper on. So this is, and also the harder it rains, the faster the windshield wiper goes. And it's all, again, automatic. I didn't know I wanted it, but I really like it. So this is, again, a model that's used, a process actually, that has been used by organizations like Disney and other companies that want to be more focused and more aligned on their customers. So the last concept here around alignment is this alignment to core principles and values. And years ago, I worked for a lovely lady who had on her whiteboard, when you walked into her office, this quote that said, "One of the saddest things in life is to forget why we started doing something in the first place." And the idea here is that we don't want to lose our integrity along the way. We want to stay focused on our core values and principles as an organization. And you look at the successful organizations that have done that, for example, like Procter & Gamble, who's been true to their values and principles for over a decade and a half, or I'm sorry, over a century and a half. So we align to our vision, to our customers, to our core values and principles through our activities. Again, behavior is a very, very important aspect. What is it we're actually doing? So the most important thing is to keep the most important thing the most important thing. And again, this is something you've seen in best practices. I was first exposed to this in Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits, where the more urgent something is and the more important something is, the higher the priority. And priorities are based on this idea of high urgency, high importance, and quadrant 1 is necessity. Those things that we have to do to remain, quote unquote, in business. Those things that are extremely high importance but not urgent provide opportunities, things that we can do that are game changers, things that can make the biggest difference. And these things where that red line is that goes across are what are called wildly important goals. And these are the things that we want to focus on in support of, as far as alignment, in support of our vision. The third element of the value formula is leverage. And this is the quote that I have within my book. It's called "Give Me a Lever Long Enough and a Fulcrum on Which to Place It, and I Shall Move the World," by Archimedes. There's a quote I read recently, and I wish I would have read this before I finished nailing down the book. But it says, if you don't understand leverage, you're working too hard. And I thought that's really a profound statement, because leverage is important. What leverage is basically gaining an advantage by using something. And using a crowbar to remove a nail from a piece of wood. That would be extremely difficult without using that particular tool. So leverage can make difficult jobs much, much easier. And it can also make seemingly impossible tasks possible. And this is an area, again, that when I talk about, for example, best practice, that we can leverage best practice because it can make difficult jobs easier and it can make a seemingly impossible task possible. And I'll just back up here for a second. Notice that the diagram, in the model, that leverage is a diamond-shaped cornerstone that supports alignment. It allows alignment to be more effective. So because it's a diamond shape, what I refer to of the various aspects of this are facets of leverage. And the 4 facets I'm going to talk about here are people, organizations, process, and tools and technology. Leveraging people, in other words, your network, is an important facet of leverage. I point out very strongly that leverage doesn't mean that you use people, that you manipulate people, but there are people in our lives, in our network, for example, a former or current boss, or lawyers or accountants or experts in any field, that have capability and resources that we do not have, that we can gain value from and through their involvement. And I give several examples. One is where Steve Jobs, as a 12-year-old student, wanted to do a science project, and he needed a certain thing that he did not have access to. Like something for an oscillator. I forget exactly the exact thing that he needed, but he wanted this. And what he did was he went to the Palo Alto phone book, found Bill Hewlett, one of the founders of Hewlett Packard, found his number in the Palo Alto phone book and called him and asked him if he could have one of those things for his science project. And Bill Hewlett was so impressed with this precocious kid that he said, not only will I give you what you need for your science project, I'm going to give you a part-time job during the summer at the very assembly line where these parts are made. And Steve Jobs basically realized from that experience that don't be afraid to ask, because the worst they can say is no or ignore your question. So I wanted to ask you as a group today, what do you think keeps people from just asking for some help or for some support on something, you know, asking a boss or whatever? So again, in the chat window, go ahead, or the question window, whichever you want to use. What are some reasons you think that people just don't even ask for help?
Let's see. Got a couple here. Fear of judgment or
Okay,
fear of rejection,
all right,
pride.
okay,
Nice, Jace.
yeah, very good.
Fear of being called out public. Yeah,
Okay,
for
so
not knowing.
okay, so
A lot of fear.
yeah, a lot of fear,
A lot of fear.
and this is the thing that's really again, when I was writing the book, I reached out to a number of people within my network, and you know, my personal experience in this, you know, in other areas as well, is that a lot of people are out there that are ready, willing, and able to help. That all you need to do is ask. And I believe very strongly that the book that I ended up writing was so much better because I got these people's involvement and input than it would have been if I had done it in isolation. So don't be afraid to ask. You know, my daughter was a great help with me to me when I was writing this, and she, you know, she supervises a number of people, and she says it drives her nuts when people, you know, she explains how to do something or explains why something is being done, and they don't ask questions about, you know, clarifying it, and they end up doing something that they shouldn't have done or do something wrong. Um, and she says, you know, people are afraid of looking like they don't know what they're doing, or or they may appear incompetent, or again, like somebody pointed out, it may be called out, like, you know, but the power of this is don't be afraid to ask. And I find it's amazing how much value can be gained by simply asking for help. And a lot of times, all they're looking for in return is a sincere thank you or appreciation or recognition for having helped. So don't be afraid to ask. So that's, again, an aspect or a facet of leverage is people. Another very powerful facet of leverage is organizations. I talk about when I was in high school, I was a member of a 4-H club, and I got a lot of value out of that, and it helped me develop, you know, certain skills and so on and so forth. So there's clubs. Toastmasters is another example. Trade and industry associations, professional clubs, suppliers, and partners who have resources and capabilities that we don't have, that we can leverage to increase our value to our customers, to our stakeholders. And I give some examples of a local organization, for example, here in my hometown, that affiliates with a large national organization, and they're able to serve more customers with more services because of their affiliation with this national organization. Another area that is oftentimes overlooked or not taken advantage of is training and educational organizations. I've been affiliated with a number of training organizations over the years, HP Education. I work very closely with St. Louis University's Center for Workforce and Organization Improvement, and called the Workforce Center. And also, you know, very strongly recommend that you look into more of what ITSM Academy can provide in terms of training. By increasing your knowledge, increasing your skills, you're increasing your value to your stakeholders. And then the last thing I was going to talk about here is the facet of leveraging process. And my experience with process goes back to almost my very first job, you know, before I, you know, finished college. And the thing that I've learned is that processes are machines, that once you've built them, they consistently produce what it is that you want to produce. Also, the experience and understanding that even good processes can be improved. So, and then automation, before you automate something, I always tell people, make sure that your process is really good before you automate it. In other words, you don't want to velocitate the crap. You don't want to make a bad process go faster. Okay, so that's leverage. Let's talk about uniqueness. Again, another great quote by Sally Hogshead here is the author of Fascinate. But before I jump into this, I guess I forgot the second polling question. Sorry, Nicole. Let's go ahead and ask the second polling question about
Sure.
vision statements.
Hmm.
Kind of go back here a couple of seconds and talk about the vision statements. We have a question on, does your organization have a vision statement that works for you?
Okay, I'll launch
Okay.
that right now.
All right, thank you.
Hmm.
So I know we a little bit out of order here, but that's
Yeah,
that's
that's
okay.
okay.
All right. So has your organization defined a clear, inspirational vision statement?
Yeah, I like some of the responses of everybody saying the fear of, asking questions. And
Yeah.
Carl said, afraid equals fearful. So
Yes, exactly.
maybe even losing, it's like asking, losing your job. Like what's, that's
Yeah.
the fear.
Yep. And I think, again, it's better to ask the question and get a no than to, because a lot of times it's amazing how often people will respond in a positive way and
Hmm.
bring value. And again, I have a couple of examples of that. So it looks like most people have a good vision statement. And the thing that I stress in that chapter on vision and vision statement is that it's better to have a good vision statement than to have a perfect vision statement. So again, so I like that answer, the fact that 56% have said that yes, they have a vision statement, and yes, it's pretty good. Again, a vision statement isn't something that's static. It can evolve over time. So again, I did a lot of research on vision and vision statements, and it made me question my own vision statement and my own organizational vision statement. So thank you for that. So let's talk about uniqueness. So again, this great quote, different is better than better is better. The idea behind uniqueness is that there's, the expression that goes back a long time ago that, like you are unique, just like everybody else. But in that, again, is this idea, the essence of what uniqueness is. It's the quality of being the only one of its kind. And even though other organizations may share a lot of the same characteristics that your organization has, or other individuals may share other characteristics similar to yours, the combination is completely unique to you and or your organization. And how do we define that uniqueness? How do we capitalize on that uniqueness as an organization? The reason it's important is because it allows you to stand out from the crowd, to make your organization, or to have you, again, stand out as something special, as something unique. And I love this quote by Dr. Seuss, why fit in when you were born to stand out? So focusing on this idea of uniqueness, again, because it's a diamond-shaped cornerstone that supports our alignment, is the four facets of uniqueness I'm going to talk about here real quickly is people, philosophy, environment, and culture. I am on record, and I will say this until my last breath, people always make the difference. That if you look at organizations that are extremely special, if you look at, the Zappos of the world, it's the people that make the difference. Airports, airlines, restaurants, people make the difference. Also, a very important aspect or facet of uniqueness is philosophy. How do you do what you do? And I, as an illustration, I talk about the philosophy of Zappos. That there's a lot of companies that sell shoes, and there's a lot of companies that sell shoes online. What makes Zappos so special is their philosophy and how they do what they do. Another facet of uniqueness is environment. What does the environment that you work within, or that your organization has, what does it say about you as an organization? The safety aspects of it, the ergonomics of it. And then lastly, one of the most important facets of uniqueness is culture. When we talk about culture, an organization's culture becomes evident in a number of ways. But to a significant degree, culture manifests itself primarily through the behavior of the people within that organization. There's a concept called TATA, think, act. How we act is largely influenced by what we think and how we think. The employee culture responds to that primarily by how management and the management culture acts toward employees and how management thinks. So to really change a culture, if that's what's necessary, it needs to start with management. And again, I give examples of how that becomes a very critical aspect if your culture needs to be changed. And I have to give a call out to a good friend of mine, Colin Rudd, who provided me with a study that he did that really underpins and illustrates how important the understanding of these two cultures becomes. The last element of the value formula is execution. Execution is the great undressed issue in the business world today. Ram Charan, author of The High Potential Leader. Notice in the model that execution, everything rests upon execution. And notice also that execution holds everything together. If you cannot execute, no value is delivered, period. So simply stated, execution is the art of getting things done. So let me go ahead and do the third polling question, Nicole, and we'll
Sure.
find out how well do you feel your organization executes your plans?
Okay. This is, and we got a couple, let's see, we're at halfway mark.
Okay.
Great.
This is really eye-opening.
I know. I really like how you have the quotes and you had them kind of guess on the mission statements. I like that because I think that's a neat because you hear it, but you don't think, oh yeah, like Zappos and Southwest Airlines. I like that.
Yep. The feedback I've gotten, and I've been very humbled by the feedback and the reviews of the book, is one of my friends, Chris Kinzel, said that as she was reading it, she started looking at it as kind of like a workbook, that it helps. It's one of my goals was to kind of cram a lot of good ideas into a book that made it that was accessible, easy to read, easy to understand. And the feedback I've gotten is that I hit that target, which is very again gratifying to me.
Well,
So
I think and you do it in a way where it's not just business but personal.
Exactly.
That there's some personal part of it too, and their goals and your mission statement as a person, and So I'm going to close the poll here, and I'm going to show the results real quick.
Okay. Again, this is really eye-opening. Is that about 10% roughly have said that they find it very difficult to execute. 89% have trouble executing. That we usually execute pretty well, but the biggest percentage there is that we struggle somewhat with execution. And I think that this is an important aspect, and why this is such an important aspect of value is that, again, if we cannot execute our plans, if we cannot execute in support of our alignment, in support of our vision, then value is not being delivered. So the reason execution is important is that I had the pleasure of working with a gentleman years ago at Hewlett-Packard named Jim Duff. He has passed away since, and it was taken long before his time. But he made this comment. He says that any good idea is a good idea until it's acted upon. He says execution is the secret sauce. And that stuck with me because without execution, no value is generated. Without execution, vision is just a pipe dream. So we need to have what I define as a process of execution, which we'll talk about here in a second. But things get in the way of execution. In any given endeavor, about 10% of your effort is going to be technical, the technology, the technical aspects of it. About 20% is financial, making sure you have the right funding and so on. 30% is dealing with people, training people, preparing people for whatever it is that we're trying to accomplish. But unfortunately, about 40% of our efforts gets tied up in this whole thing of politics. And in talking with people, these numbers seem to kind of fall out. So in the book, Winning at Office Politics by Dr. M.G. McIntyre, she talks about, again, look at behavior. If a person's behavior is supporting business goals, as well as supporting their own personal goals, that's a winner. You want that type of mindset, you want that type of person within your organization because they're supporting their own personal goals, moving forward personally, but at the same time, helping the organization accomplish what they're setting out to accomplish. Those people who support the business goals but hurt their own personal goals are martyrs. You don't want to be a martyr. If it's not working for you, go someplace where you're achieving your own personal goals as well as helping business goals. If you're hurting the business goals but just supporting yourself and moving yourself forward on your own personal goals, then that's known as a sociopath. If you're doing neither, then you have to kind of question, like, why would a person do that? They're neither helping the business accomplish what they're wanting to accomplish or their own individual personal goals. Dr. McIntyre refers to those people as dimwits. So, but again, look at the behavior. What are people doing? So what we want to do is define a process for execution. And again, I find myself promoting this book called The 4 Disciplines of Execution by the Franklin Covey organization. People need to know what the goal is. Very clear, concise, and this again is why the vision statement is such an important thing. They also need to know what they need to do to achieve it. It's not enough to say, okay, here's the goal, go out and do it. What is it that they need to do to achieve the goal? They also need to have an understanding of, are we winning? Are we moving toward the goal? Are we succeeding? So they need to understand where they are in relationship to achieving the goal. And then lastly, they need to hold themselves as well as their teammates accountable for the achievement of the goal. So in the book, The 4 Disciplines of Execution, they define this process of creating a cadence of, of starting with a focus on the wildly important, which we talked about in the alignment area, acting on lead measures to make sure we understand that we're measuring the right thing. So we're acting on lead measures, keeping a compelling scoreboard so people know at any point in time where they are in relationship to achieving their goals, and then lastly, creating a cadence of accountability. And I provide an example in the chapter on execution of a customer I had where they really embraced this and how they went from having kind of questionable value as an organization to having value that is unquestioned within their organization. So very powerful process for execution. So the last area here is we're going to talk about is pulling it together and keeping it together. But before we do that, the last polling question is, oh, we already asked that about execution. So that actually reinforces the need for execution. The secret to business success is synergy. So it doesn't take some of the parts, it takes the sum of the parts. I don't know if anybody else likes to assemble Legos, but my wife and I have kind of found this to be a lot of fun. Recently, like for Christmas, I bought her the Hogwarts castle, and this is what was in the box. Okay, that looks nothing like this. So it's important again that we need to kind of again have that picture on the front of the box that kind of here's what we're trying to do and assemble these parts. And I give several examples of organizations that recognized that we don't just want to have some of the parts, we want to have the sum of the parts, because that's where the synergy comes into play. So if you look at the value formula model, the fact that these pieces fit together in support of the accomplishment and the moving toward the vision, built within this are the definition of the mission statement, understanding of assessment of where we are in relationship to where we want to be, the establishment of critical goals and the plans to accomplish those using external resources and capabilities from a leverage standpoint, understanding and capitalizing on our internal resources and capabilities, validating along the way our progress, and building momentum. And I give examples of how momentum can and should be capitalized upon. So one final thought around the value formula. Again, going back to St. Mother Teresa of Calcutta, that not all of us can do great things, but we can do small things with great love. And one of the things I found is almost a common thread of those organizations that really exude value to their customers and stakeholders is that they tend to do what they do with a great deal of love and attention. And I don't think it's just my imagination. I think that, when you walk into an organization where people really love what they're doing and they really sincerely, genuinely like and or love their customers, there's a value that's being released that is almost, again, kind of an intangible thing, like the grandma that bakes the cookies with that special ingredient called love. So as you think about your value, work your love for what you do into that, And again, that will become very evident to the stakeholders in your life and in your organization. So so let's kind of just wrap up with that. I've come to learn that feedback, even negative feedback, is a blessing. So please stay in touch. There's my email address. Again, if you're interested in getting a free downloadable version of the book when it becomes available, go to the valueformulabook.com landing page, put in your email address. I promise you I will not use it or abuse it other than to keep you informed of what's going on. That's my Twitter handle, and I'm on LinkedIn. Just search for Ken Wendle and feel free to link up in LinkedIn. So Nicole?
Thank you, Ken. That was a great presentation. And I have to say, I think for us at the Academy, I think our mission statement is educate and inspire. And I think you did both today. So thank you so much.
You're
I
very
just
welcome.
wanted to open it up to anybody that has any questions. I know we do have a couple comments, and I kind of wanted to read through some of them.
Okay.
Hope asks, when we learn how people learn, we learn how to present information at a person's level of retaining knowledge.
Okay.
So
that's great. That's understanding your stakeholders, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times I find it amazing sometimes how many organizations don't take the time to actually get to know and listen to their customers and other stakeholders.
And she typed back in, but as the individual, I must ask for instructions that incorporate my level of learning. You can't win the lottery if you don't. So thank you, Hope.
That's a good question. Yeah, again, I didn't write this as an IT service management or IT book, but more from a business perspective as being, first and foremost, a business person that happens to be in the IT field or has been in the IT field for some time in service management and so on. I wanted to kind of find the principles, the concepts of value creation from a higher level. The primary example I give within the book is the work I did with a group at Penn State University called the Outreach Analytics and Reporting Group, and my friend there, Corey Kite, who where we kind of applied these principles and helped their organization move from where they really had questionable value to the university to now, several years later, they're being asked to be involved with a number of strategic initiatives across the university. So that they were not an IT organization per se, but more of a service organization, again, providing reports and analytics to various schools within the university. But again, my work with IT organizations through the years, again, I've seen these as kind of common threads, and that's really why I wrote the book. And I recognize that there's not anything in there that's like earth-shattering or brand new, right? But the anecdotes that I share, the experiences I share, the stories that I share are kind of unique to me. And then the model, I think, the way it pulls together, I think is an important aspect of it. It's not meant to take the place of anything, but I actually kind of give you an idea that you can leverage best practice like ITIL, like Lean, Six Sigma, DevOps, but also don't be afraid to look within your organization for skill sets and what makes you unique as an organization, or again as an individual. But ultimately, it's in support of what are you all about as an organization, and that creating a vision, as I point out in my book, is a challenge because, like strategy, somebody once pointed out that one of the most difficult aspects of creating a strategy is saying no to everything else that you could do. And so it is with a vision statement. By defining this is what we are becoming, you've just said, I'm not going to do any of these other, I'm not going to be any of these other things. This is what I'm going to be. And so I give some guidance around that. But that really is a challenge because we tend to want to leave our options open. And when you nail down a vision, you've basically said, this is who we are becoming. This is what we are becoming. So I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah, I mean, this is applicable to IT organizations. It's primarily, my target is more, the entrepreneurial organizations, small to mid-size organizations. Although again, it's applicable to organizations within a big company as well.
Great. So yeah, we have some people going on to your landing page to check out the book.
I
So
sincerely appreciate that, and
that's
like I said,
great.
I love to keep track of folks and giving them again the opportunity to download a PDF version of the value formula when it becomes available. It's almost there. If anybody's ever written a book, they probably have learned that dealing with publishers can be extremely challenging. So again, I
Yep.
appreciate you taking the time to do that.
Well, great. Well, Ken, this was a fantastic presentation. Thank you so much. Like I
Thank
said, I
you.
think you've covered our mission, our little ITSM Academy mission statement, educate and inspire.
Yep.
So we hope to see you guys next month. And the slide deck, like I said, will be available probably by tomorrow with the recording. So share with colleagues, and I hope you all have a wonderful day, wonderful weekend. And we are right at 12 o'clock, so it's lunchtime.
All right.
All right.
Thank you again. All right. Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you so much. Take
All right.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.